Before this video starts, I just wanted to pay tribute to Razor Ramon Scott Hall. It's very unfortunate that he passed away the other day. I actually couldn't believe it. You know, it was something that was very hard to believe because it was Scott Hall, it was Razor Ramon. Like, I've been watching classic stuff of his every once in a while, whether it be the ladder match from WrestleMania 10, a Razor Ramon vignette, anything. Like, it's just weird. A founding member of the NWO passed away. It just doesn't seem real. At least that's how I felt on Monday. I couldn't exactly believe it, but I slowly come to terms with it, unfortunately. Ramon is, of course, one of the greatest wrestlers to have never won the World Championship, along with the likes of Jake Roberts, Ted DiBiase, Mr. Perfect. His career is iconic. He's truly one of the most influential wrestlers of all time. And even though I've come to terms with it, it's still weird, especially when they played that video tribute of his on Raw. I was at a loss for words. Scott Hall left behind him an indelible legacy. He's definitely made an impact inside and outside the ring, whether it be with the Razor Ramon character, bringing in guaranteed contracts along with Kevin Nash, forming the NWO, you name it. He's had an iconic career, and I've heard he's been in pain for the last few years, so I guess it's better that he rested now. More often than any other year, the WWE in 2002 brought along far too much talent. We all know about John Cena, Batista, and Brock Lesnar's stories. They're already perceived as the future of the company, and the men made good on that prophecy. Then there's other guys who were either A, underwhelming, or B, didn't have many favorites in the back. This is reserved for the likes of Shelton Benjamin and Mark Jindrak. Even further below were guys who did show some potential, but disappeared from out of nowhere. One of those guys was Chris Harvard, Christopher Nowinski. The Harvard alumni had a background in football and was billed at 6'5". He had decent mic skills and wasn't bad in the ring. I can honestly imagine him doing much more with one of those varsity jackets on. That did not happen due to something far out of his control, of course, that being a career-ending injury. Before entering the world of professional wrestling, Nowinski attended Harvard. In addition, he played football as a defensive tackle for the university's team. Soon enough, he earned his PhD in behavioral neuroscience from the Boston University School of Medicine. Also, Nowinski had an AEB in sociology, but despite this, he decided to become a pro wrestler of all things. I recall Maven in an interview with Chris Van Vliet said that Nowinski trained before Tough Enough, but I couldn't find anything on it. With that said, he managed to be a contestant for the first season of Tough Enough. The season that saw Josh Matthews become a wrestler, Triple H saw a guy's nuts when he didn't need to, and if you watch the season in its entirety, you can notice some familiar faces. Nowinski was amongst the most notable prospects because of his size, speed, athletic ability, and of course his look. It was easily what WWF was looking for, but Maven won it, and even he was flabbergasted by this. Nonetheless, Nowinski was almost in. He trained with Killer Kowalski and had a short indie run, in particular competing with Heartland Wrestling Association with the ring name Chris Harvard. It was a little play on his Harvard background that would continue to develop. WWE signed him soon afterwards after he featured in a couple of untelevised matches. On the June 10, 2002 episode of Raw, the Texan Bradshaw challenged William Regal for the European Championship. During the match, Chris Nowinski randomly jumped out of ringside, which led to Bradshaw's distraction, and Regal capitalized for the victory. A few seconds later, it had become apparent that this was a deceitful tactic to aid William Regal in his match. The following week, college football music plays, and Nowinski came out looking like he just received a PhD. I mean, who wrestles in this outfit? Spike Dudley solved this problem, but it had become apparent that this was done on purpose. Nowinski wanted to show that he's an intellect by day and wrestler by night. Spike was Raw's residential jobber at the time. You know, if you want an easy win, they give you Spike. And even then, he fought back here and Regal had to make a distraction. And that's how bad Nowinski was to get the victory. Overall, it was basic 2000s heel stuff. He also required a bit more time to execute his moves much more crisper, but, you know, it wasn't bad. Bradshaw saved Spike afterwards and dropped Regal with a mean-ass clothesline, and this led to a tag team match between the four, which saw Nowinski cheat to win. Bradshaw smiled, knowing that, well, Chris Harvard beat him, he gets to bully him in 2 minutes. This is clearly unbeknownst to the newcomer. Instead of challenging for the Hardcore Championship, Chris Harvard preferred to challenge Bradshaw in a regular match. Why is this? He didn't understand why he should be the Hardcore Champion. Because wrestlers are going to come up to him constantly trying to take it from him. They're going to be attacking him in the parking lot or whatever, and it's not wise. He also talked about how Harvard taught him that the most dangerous weapon is intelligence. That proved to be true because Bradshaw brought in a bunch of weapons only to take a shot in the face with a cowbell, leading to Nowinski's victory once again. To Lawler, it was smart. To JR, it was only a matter of time before he got his. Now, despite all this, Christopher Nowinski never got to show off his heel character yet verbally. Everyone knew he was arrogant, smart, a graduate from Harvard, but it took a while for him to flesh it out. The feud itself, though, was far from over. You had a tag team match featuring Jackie Gayda and Trish Stratus, and this match was more green than RVD's pockets, because the heels are from Tough Enough, and it meant that there was a chance of this going terrible, and that's what happened. Come to think about it, Nowinski didn't do much. As you could see, Trish Stratus had some very brutal hands. Either that or John Cena delivered a knockout blow. We don't know. And about Nowinski refusing to compete in a hardcore match, he was in that very position and tried to offer Bradshaw the victory as long as the match doesn't happen. Harvard sucks chant intensifies, and about this, well, Nowinski though read through it and fooled Bradshaw. But unfortunately for him, he took a huge beating and a crate was shut on his head. Luckily, Johnny Stamboli ran in and installed a hardcore title, so Bradshaw was busy. With that said, Nowinski finally spoke on the mic and couldn't come to terms with being booed. I mean, he's from Harvard. Then again, he reiterated that Harvard statement, but felt that the fans should be excited for this. And The Undertaker interrupted. JR said that he had a PhD in ass-kicking. Nowinski was fearful of finding himself in wrestler's court, so he showed respect to The Undertaker. Unfortunately for him, it didn't end as well as it did for John Cena. And damn what a last ride that was. Chris jobbed out to The Undertaker later on, and other than trying to end Molly's virginity like Brock ended Taker's streak, he was still stuck in the lower mid-card where he was trashing Spike for not getting with Trish. Now about the whole Regal-Nowinski partnership, it was over because Regal was joining the Un-Americans. The Harvard graduate, on the other hand, wasn't thinking much here because he was eagerly anticipating the lesbians. So Regal slapped a whole lot of sense in him to the point where he walked out with a limp. Alright, that's an exaggeration. It's a table spot from the previous week. But anyways, he walked out to the ring and trashed Iowa State. He made a couple of jokes to generate heat, leading to Tommy Dreamer coming out. He threatened to beat him with the Singapore cane, to which Nowinski responded, 99% of these people don't know where Singapore is. And he ended up taking a beating for all of 2 seconds because he got his hands on one of those canes. The assault went awry and he had to run away, and this was the beginning of yet another mid-card feud, or lower mid-card. Yeah, it's a lower mid-card feud. Unfortunately for Nowinski at the time, he was unable to compete because he had to get surgery in order to remove a marble-sized benign tumor on his left jaw. This hadn't developed recently as Nowinski had the tumor for several years. It just grew in size and was noticeable. The one thing I loved about this interview on WWE.com is that he was still in character. Oh, and this didn't prevent him from appearing on Raw though. In an effort to whoop Tommy Dreamer's ass, he went to his home, a classroom. He wanted to teach him a lesson, that being not to mess with a Harvard graduate. This is the most random altercation. He taught him geography and where Singapore is, but Dreamer turned out to be a much better teacher though in this moment. Poor Nowinski took a cane shot to the face, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, didn't this man have surgery recently? That said, this was a creative brawl. I like the little references such as Dreamer saying, class dismissed. He broke the ceiling, which was something I liked, and it was just a quick little thing. At the same time, Nowinski also started a tough enough feud with Al Snow. I don't know why they're doing this. They already did it with Maven and Taz, and it's just unnecessary, you know? It's like, oh, you got beef from Tough Enough? Even then, Snow helped him beat Dreamer and even Jeff Hardy. The Harvard graduate, though, was far above this, and he didn't want any help because he was good enough. Snow still had a sense of loyalty to his kid, despite this attitude. He responded saying that his success wasn't because of Tough Enough, and even asked Al Snow to bring him any wrestler for a match tonight. Turns out it was Booker T. This was a nice test for the arrogant upstart. Unlike the previous matches, Al Snow lost control and cost Booker the match. Intelligence is key, and that's what Nowinski showed here, by provoking Al, it incited rage and anger, leading to a victory for himself. After making a heroic return to Boston, he said that the town has become irrelevant ever since he left. Nowinski went as far as to say that Boston's combined brave power isn't enough heat to melt Ted Williams' frozen corpse. Damn! Al Snow interrupted and Chris asked him if he'd like to grapple, and by God, it's Maven! The feud nobody asked for was finally gonna happen. He delivered a few strikes, Snow struck him in the face, and he did what he does best, and that's run the hell out of there. After yet again outsmarting his old teacher the following week, he whooped his ass with a book, leading to Maven with the lower card pay-per-view shirt coming in. He sends him running, and it was clear that these two were going to face off soon. But before that could go down, Snow and Nowinski faced off in a School of Hard Knocks match. The fact that he's taking a beating with a backpack on is more than enough for me to like this match. They used a couple of school supplies, blasted each other with bones, erasers, and Al Snow even brought in a bowling ball again. Snow got too hardcore here, and yes, he was outsmarted. So on to other things. Basically, the Maven and Nowinski feud was about Tough Enough. They did this to Maven already with a damn Taz feud, and here, Nowinski had to resort to verbal tactics in order to have the match thrown out. He basically told Maven, hey, if it wasn't for your mother having cancer, you wouldn't win Tough Enough, and he got angry. Unfortunately for Maven, he got taught a lesson here not to be stupid, as Nowinski dropped him with a damn book. This was going to lead to a match at Armageddon, but apparently it got cut off because of time constraints. So because of that, they had the match the following night, and during it, Jerry Lawler's talking about Maven and his mother having cancer, leading to his Tough Enough victory, and the action itself was back and forth. They knew each other very well, so it's expected. Nowinski had to cheat in order to score the victory over Maven, and for some reason, he was partners with D'Lo Brown around here. The relationship between the two is based on Nowinski's respect and admiration for D'Lo Brown. He even accused Stacy of denying D'Lo's marketing manager request because he was an intelligent black man. Same thing with the refs to Nowinski. He's too smart and they deny him because of it. So he wanted to be, quote, down with the Brown. The foreman didn't last for long, and Teddy Long made his return in order to combat racism and prejudice. He was going to start by managing D'Lo, and they were out to fight the man. As for Nowinski, Edge busted his nose and he had to start wearing a protective face mask, although I'm not sure if that's the reason why, because he competed for a couple of weeks afterwards without it. Other than that, he wrestled occasionally here and there before having a mini feud with Scott Steiner. Now for reference, Steiner debuted at Survivor Series and beat his ass up in Madison Square Garden. You guys remember that for sure. I didn't mention it here because it's kind of an unnecessary filler. With that said, Nowinski had apparently spent $30,000 on his face and asked for Steiner to take it easy. Now, we all know Steiner. It's go big or go home. The man probably shows intensity in his sleep. Here, he gave him an Ivy League quality beatdown. So Nowinski decided to rebound politically. He trashed America for being arrogant to the point where they're oblivious to issues. He wanted a different approach to things and just wanted everyone to accept his opinion. Steiner had this death look on his face and gave him yet another beating. So they had a debate the next week. The two discussed or debated a number of political topics, and one of the most memorable moments of this segment was when Steiner said that he's wrestled a lot of countries. Anyways, he didn't appreciate what Nowinski had to say and said that if he didn't like the troops, like the Dixie Chicks, he could go to hell or France. He even mistakenly said terrorism drew first blood. Chris had to respond with 3 minutes, and you know the rest. What's even funnier to me is a La Resistance vignette aired a few seconds later. They did that on purpose, of course, and the feud other than this wasn't much. Steiner and Nowinski faced off in tag team action without another singles match. The rivalry transitioned into a feud between Steiner and Test and La Resistance. So where did this leave the Harvard graduate? On the May 26, 2003 episode of Raw, Teddy Long once again held the, quote, white boy challenge for Rodney Mack. Teddy had said that him and D'Lo were held down by the man, but here though, Rodney Mack was his guy. Bubba Ray Dudley answered the challenge, and while he did put the work in, Christopher Nowinski dropped him and the white boy challenge streak continued. Since this story continued to develop on Heat, the quality is going to go down like WWE 2K14 to WWE 2K15. And now, Theodore Long didn't want a white man's help. But Nowinski explained things. He claimed that he was a minority as well. Why? Because he was intelligent, and he's being held down because of that. He also claimed that while there were different types of smarts, he's educational smart, and Teddy Long and Rodney Mack were apparently street smart, they were still smart at the end of the day. Now, Teddy Long was fair. He said that he wanted to be different from the man, and said that if Nowinski does well tonight, then all's good. He also said, quote, you gotta be bout it. And Chris was perplexed. He eventually understood the assignment. About the match, Nowinski did well, but the Dudleys interfered, and so Chris had to save Rodney Mack from a 3D. As a result of this, Nowinski was now partners with Rodney Mack. Teddy Long attributes his inclusion to the group due to Nowinski's test scores on African American studies. He also said that Devon wasn't black and instead he's brown. So the King said, Rodney's beige? This man was really pushing his buttons. With that said, Nowinski and Mack were set to face the Dudleys at Bad Blood. Before the show began, he provoked Devon, asking him, why is it your brother who's telling you to get the table instead of getting the table himself? And he actually thought about it. This is one of Nowinski's most important matches up to this point, because they actually beat the Dudleys using some deceitful tactics. Unfortunately, this was as good as it was going to get for the Harvard graduate. His final televised match came on the June 23, 2003 episode of Raw, where he ironically lost to Maven. It was unbeknownst to him that the concussion he received in a tag team match against the Dudleys would cost him his career. So apparently this is how it goes. In Hartford, Connecticut on June 21, 2003, Bubba kicked him in the head and gave him a concussion. Despite this, Nowinski had that tough wrestler attitude and refused to mention his injury to anybody for almost a month. Once he did, Nowinski was taken off the road in order to heal, and the expectation was that he was coming back. However, that would be the contrary. Every few weeks, it was revealed that he was struggling. Every day, he'd suffer, and at night, it would be worse. Here's what he had to say in October of 2003. Eventually, this will heal, but I no longer know what eventually means. Nowinski said earlier this week in Hartford, Connecticut, I no longer measure my progress in weeks. There was, however, a sense of optimism as his status went from doubtful to hopeful in early 2004. The headaches are not a daily threat to my existence anymore. They're there, most days after working out or doing something strenuous, but they're just not as bad, and I don't feel miserable. There's no doubt, it's almost a daily improvement, and now that I can work out all the time, I'm in the best shape of my career. I'm 10 pounds lighter than I'd ever been in the ring, I'm in good athletic shape, and so I'm excited about that. When I'm ready to go, I'll be ready to go. However, in trying to set timetables for his return, it delayed it, and Nowinski developed a sleepwalking habit. On the other side, even though it was very unlikely that he would return, he was working on a book to help athletes deal with concussions. There wasn't much news about Nowinski throughout the fall of 2004, and it wasn't until April of 2005 that anything popped up. This was a minor thing, but Nowinski's bio was removed from the Raw roster on WWE.com, signaling that his career was over. In searching for the truth regarding the studies of concussions, Nowinski found something huge. I realized when I was visiting a lot of doctors, they weren't giving me very good answers about what was wrong with my head, said Nowinski. I read every study I could find, and I realized there was a ton of evidence showing concussions lead to depression, and multiple concussions can lead to Alzheimer. With that, Nowinski released a book called Head Games, Football's Concussion Crisis, which went in depth about the long-term effects of concussions. He wrote about the symptoms and the signs that could save somebody, and along with that, he researched a few former NFL players' brains such as Andre Waters and Ted Johnson. Then the Chris Benoit tragedy happened, and he asked for a brain examination. His contributions helped CTE become a bigger talking point in the world of sports. He also found the Sports Legacy Institute, which researched deeply into the effects of brain damage and also raised awareness. A bunch of wrestlers have gone on to say that they will donate their brains for CTE research, and they were donating it to Nowinski's Concussion Foundation. Kevin Nash, Jeff Hardy, RVD, and Mick Foley were amongst the names. Overall, Christopher Nowinski's in-ring career may have not been the most memorable. He was only featured in 3 pay-per-views, those being Survivor Series 2002, Royal Rumble 2003, and Bad Blood 2003. You can include Insurrection also. He was in one video game, that being Raw 2, but other than that, he was a simple heel who knew how to use his education and his success to rile up the fans. It worked well for him. Was it going to lead to something huge? Doubtful, but then again, the man was 24 at the time and it was showing some potential. One thing for certain though is that he was better off, as rough as that sounds. It allowed him to study the effects of concussions on these sports players and raise awareness, and that alone should place him in the Hall of Fame. He's done so much more than a bunch of people will ever do in their lives. And other than that, you can occasionally hear about him at a WWE event. AEW also brought him in a while ago to discuss head trauma. So at the end of the day, he's doing a great thing, something that's bigger than wrestling. He didn't have a memorable career, but everything following it is definitely the opposite. Alright, what did you guys think of Christopher Nowinski? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit a spine buster on the like button, and perhaps the honor roll and the subscribe button. Peace, I'm out.